So, how is everyone? All right? Okay, good. So, we have a special guest this morning speaking. Let's get Emma up, shall we, Emma? Give Emma a round of applause. That's yours. So, I'm going to start every interview off with a simple question, which is, who are you and where are you from? So, Emma, who are you and where are you from?
I'm Emma. I'm a special needs teacher and I'm now a SENCO, which is a special educational needs coordinator, and originally I was from Brighton.
Oh, originally from Brighton. And how long have you been in Eltham then, if you...
I moved up to London and lived in Plumstead from December 2003, and Dirk was born in January 2004.
And Dirk is your youngest son?
No, my eldest son.
Oh, Dirk. Sorry, Teo.
Teo's my younger one.
Let me just say that again, I'll cut that out. So Teo's your youngest son, and Dirk's at university. Yeah.
Right.
So what brought you here to EGCC? When was...
So we had gone to church. We started off going to the Methodist church in Plumstead, and then we moved to St Mark's in Plumstead, and then when we moved to Mottingham, we started going to St Andrews. And then when I moved into Eltham, we didn't go anywhere for about maybe 2 years. I mean, we popped in and out of various places, but we didn't settle anywhere. And then Simeon had his, it would have been his 12th birthday. And Teo and Simeon had been at Eltham C of E school together. And Simeon had his 12th birthday and invited Teo. And although Teo and Dirk had been at Eltham C of E for a very long time, because I'd worked full-time, I had never actually met Debbie, Simeon's mum. And so I dropped Teo off at Simeon's house and started talking to Debbie on the doorstep. And Debbie said they were going to be taking them down to play in the church down here in the hall. And I started asking her about Eltham Green Community Church, and decided it sounded like the kind of place I wanted to go to. And so we started coming the following Sunday, and, you know, really, we've been every Sunday that we could possibly attend since.
And amen to that. So when did you first hear about Christ or Christianity?
So I was brought up in a Christian family. My mother and my maternal grandparents always took me to church from the time, I can't remember a time I wasn't going to church. It was a normal Anglican church. So I belonged to the Brownies, the Guides. So I went, yes, so God's always been there. There's never been any doubt in my mind that God doesn't exist. He's just always been there.
And was there a moment where you, some say it in different ways, decided to become a Christian or gave your life to the Lord? Or
I can't say that. No. I've just always known that he's there. You know, I've always been able to talk to him from a very early age. I imagine God. There must be so many people talking to God that he must just only have ears all round his head. Because everyone must be talking to him at the same time. So that was my image of God from a very, very early age, that he was there to hear whatever you wanted to tell him.
Is there a particular moment that you would say that you could share with us that would be encouraging, where God has really done something quite amazing?
I just think he's always been there. I mean, there are things like, so for example, once when I was working in Nottingham, I had to get to Heathrow Airport on a Friday after school, and I got onto the M1, the traffic wasn't moving, I knew I was going to miss my flight, and I was just like, I can't do anything about this. I'm just going to have to sit here and just like, it's totally out of my hands. And I got to Heathrow fully expecting that my flight to the Isle of Man will have gone, and but it hadn't gone, and I was able to get on the flight. But I think it's those kind of things where things are totally out of your control, and you just have to sit back and know that God's in the driving seat and that He'll prepare you for whatever. I mean, I think that's something else I'd like to say, is that things happen in your life. So, for example, I was a teacher for a very long time before I had my boys, and that totally prepared me for bringing up the boys. You know, I had a lot of experience about, you know, setting boundaries and all those kind of things. So, really, I mean, being a parent is the hardest job you'll ever have, but I think, you know, like, I do think God really prepares you for everything.
Oh, wonderful. That's it. Unless you want to say anything else.
No.
Lovely, thank you. And Teo and Dirk are amazing as well. But, okay, let's get our next person, Terry. Let's give a round of applause for Terry. Really milking the old walk down, Terry. So, Terry, who are you and where are you from?
Yeah, I'm a gardener, like sort of the last 10 years and, well, 20 years. I'm from Lambeth. I was born in Lambeth, just off of Lambeth Walk. And I was christened in Lambeth Church next to Lambeth Palace. And yeah, it sort of played a big part of my life, like in my early days. I lived there to about the age of 11. And I lost my father when I was 7, and that's when I started, my mother changed my school, and I went to a C of E school, Holy Trinity School, and basically said the prayers of an evening, put your chairs up, and you said your prayers and everything. We didn't have McDonald's then or Wimpy's, and we had just fish and chips and pie mash. Like, I don't even think you had Chinese in them days, like, you know. So
They were hard times.
Yeah, good times, like, you know. But yeah, I loved it, and I loved the song Lambeth Walk, and I used to think I was a bit of a sort of Cockney, and I learnt all the slang, and, you know, I was only about, like, say, 11. But, yeah, life was good, and, yeah, I sort of been in and out of the churches over the years, and I moved to Peckham. I lived in Peckham for quite some years, and used to go, I think I went to Cubs, and went to the Boys Brigade, like, you know, and we used to do a lot of marching up and down, and I always wanted to get on the drums, but I never made it that far, you know, and they used to have the trumpets and that, and I think I went with the Scouts for a little while, but yeah, I think it's important, youth groups, like, you know, and there was a lot more of them about in them days, like, you know, even when I lived in Peckham, I used to go to youth groups, and I met it was a chap called a vicar called David Shepherd. He was an England cricket player. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he became the Archbishop of Liverpool in the end, like, you know, and yeah, it was interesting, and yeah, and funny enough, when my dad died, I've got to be honest about it. I think I spoke to Debbie about this. I was so angry, like, with God, like, you know. And I thought, like, if I had all the money in the world, I would want him back, you know. And yeah, sort of, and I carried that for years. That, like, you know, it was only when about 5 years ago, like, I realised it wasn't like God's fault. It was like human error that actually killed him, because he was working and breathing in all this grass stuff, like, you know, and it was nothing, you know, I was sort of, you know, forgiven that at the end, like, you know, and I realised it weren't God's fault. But someone said it's not, it's okay to be angry with God, like, you know, but yeah, it's all part of my growing up and everything. But
so what brought you here?
Yeah, what brought me here, I was living locally with me son and daughter, like, I was a one parent, and Jim and Margaret knocked on my door one day, and they come in, had a cup of tea, started talking to me, and I actually come here about 30 35 years ago, like about 3 times. I brought my son and daughter in. We had a free dinner around the corner, and I thought, oh, that's good, getting a free dinner. It helped me because I was just on benefits, like, you know. And but what brought me here eventually, about 5 years ago, was I was going to St Andrews up Court Road, and I went there for about 15 years, and the last 5 years, I become a verger, and I used to have to robe up, and I used to go up on the altar, and I was thinking, what am I doing? How did I end up here, like, you know? And I was up there with the vicar, and I used to have to sort of do a bow and do this and do the chalices and clean them and everything. And I thought, God, how am I doing up here in front of the congregation, like, you know? And I thought, like me, I was the right sort of Peckham lad, you know, and like Fools and Horses, Del Boy and all that, you know. And but, you know, sort of, I've learned, like, even that song they were just singing. I bought a Bible about 20 years ago, and this Bible, and it had Amen, is it? I thought, what's Amen? What's that all about? Like, you know, and it's a learning, growing process, and, you know, I'm still learning every day, like, you know, coming to church. And I've learned from reading the Bible. I get me answers that I need sometimes. I don't read it as often as I should do, but I read the Bible, and it gives me little answers that I need to know. And some of the strips, what, you know, Jesus, like in the boat when the disciples, you know, complaining, and he said, like, you have little faith, like, and he calms all these little things help me, you know, and get me through life. And yeah, sort of. Then I come here. I actually, before I come here, I was going to a church. I was going to a church in Bexley Heath. They had an Alpha course, and I really...
Because they had food, was that?
Sorry?
Because they had food.
Yeah, yeah, you just get food at the end, that's right. And I found the Alpha course is really interesting, because they said, if you've got anything silly to say, because sometimes we hold on for things, like, and we're not sure about. And, you know, that thing in the... I was talking to, the other day, about, like, in the Bible where it says, you know, Jesus says, like, my yoke's lighter. And I thought, like, it meant the yoke of an egg, like. And, you know, you find out, like, later he was saying, you know, he was a carpenter. And but I went to this church, the Alpha course. It was what I found got me really believing, like, is... at the end of the Alpha course, like after about 12 sessions, they had like a spiritual day, like, you know, and it was in this hall, and excuse me, and we joined these other groups, and we was all standing there, like standing up, and we was closing our eyes, and the leader was saying something to us, like, you know, like, and people were crying, and anyway, I had this, like, vision that there was, like, an angel standing in front of me, and I could see this angel, and, you know, a beautiful angel, white and everything, and that sort of, the chap come over to me at the end when I sort of come through. He said, you was receiving, wasn't you? And I said, yes. And that's what I was receiving. That's what really kicked in. And all them years I went to St Andrews, it, you know, nothing really kicked in, like, you know, and that really... got my belief in Jesus. I was more of a God person, but that really got my belief in Jesus. And then I started going to churches all around Eltham, and I come here one day, and I was talking to a chap over there, and I mentioned this before, and he's looking at me, and he said, you're Terry, ain't you? I said, you're Jim, ain't you? And it's Jim that I saw from 30 years ago, and I loved the music, like the St Andrews is really a traditional church of all the hymns and the old hymns, and I loved the songs here, and yeah, sort of like, you know, one of the songs that was standing out this week after you told me was like Jerusalem. That really, any time I hear that, I played it on my phone, it just really lifts me up, like, you know. But what can I say? What I've learned here over the last 5 years, Jana put a thing up once with the cartoon with the little funny people, like, don't give up. I don't know if you remember that. And I've learned it over the last 5 years, don't give up. Like, sometimes, you know, not to quit. Like, you know, and Jesus there for me, and he nudges me on. Sometimes I think, oh, what do I do? And he sort of pushes me in on, like, to do something and to say something. And I'm quite a quiet person. I don't say a lot, like, you know, I'd sort of probably a little bit of confidence to come up here sometimes. And I've had, like, quite an amazing life sometimes before. You know, I've done a lot of amateur dramatics, which I enjoyed, and I've done singing and dancing and acting. But that all sort of, you know, life sort of changes, and I've come through quite a lot. And what inspired me last year was when I was ill in hospital, and I was in bed, I thought I was going to die, and people prayed in the prayer group, and that really lifted me up, like, you know. And after I was getting up out of bed after about 8-10 days, and I found the church in the hospital, and praying in the hospital, that sort of lifted me. And it's sort of like, it's sort of given me a crutch. Like,
I know that you said, because you said to me you'll be short about an hour. So
I'll keep it short.
Yeah, keep it short. Anyway, that's my first question.
Okay.
No, it's fantastic. It's it's a lovely story, isn't it? To see how God is touching you. And what I love about you, Terry, is that you are just a London boy, and it's lovely. That's not the only thing I love about you. Just say about Terry. Terry also does a lot of work around the church that goes unnoticed. So, but I think that's great what you just shared. So unless you've got anything you want to say.
So if
we got some time.
Yeah, so you've got half hour. If anyone wants one day to have a little half hour out in the garden, I can, like, pass some of the stuff that I learned on from gardening. You know, I'm not a teacher, but I've got a lot of tips I could probably tell them how to, you know, prune.
So if you need any help in your own garden, he's saying, not just like he wants to pass on the gardening work onto you in the church.
I can show you how to learn use a lawnmower and petrol lawnmower and how to maintain it, and you can have a go at it. Like, give me a break.
Terry can show you his pruning technique. It's quite unusual, isn't it? Thank you, Terry. Right. Kristen, do you want to come up? Let's have a round of applause for Kristen. So, Kristen, who are you and where are you from?
I'm Kristen, born and raised in Cyprus, to one American parent, one American Cypriot parent. I've been in the UK for about almost 12 years now.
Yep. Good.
London for about 6-ish years.
Yeah. So your accent is slowly becoming South East London?
No.
So what brought you to Eltham Green Community Church?
Me and my husband, Daniel, just moved to New Eltham about 10 months ago from Deptford. And we just wanted a local church, hopefully. And when we first moved here, I'd actually been praying about I wanted to do some like one-on-one Pilates classes with someone who had a physio background. And I hadn't really found anything in general. I've been looking for years that was like also affordable and just good and stuff. And then we moved here, and right after moving into the house, I was just having a look on Google Maps, and lo and behold, just down the street from me, there was on Google Maps, it had like a business of a woman who does Pilates, went on her website, turned out she used to be a physio. I was like, oh, that's perfect. Sent her an email. She replies saying, oh, I'm just going to a prayer retreat this weekend, but I'll get back to you. I went to Dan, I was like, oh, she's a Christian too. I was so excited. Turned out to be Joanne. Had some sessions with Joanne, decided to wait until my second session with her to tell her I'm a Christian too. And then just asked her where she was going to church because we were still looking. And then we started coming here.
It's great. So when did Christianity or Christ come into your life?
Brought up in a Christian household, sort of from Cyprus, so it's kind of just, everyone's kind of Greek Orthodox, and especially the older generation, because we lived with my grandma So they're just quite, talk about God a lot, but more just from an orthodox religious perspective as opposed to like faith-filled. And then when we were about 10 years old, my mom started taking us to this one church because she realized that this church was a pastor that someone she knew when she was younger. It wasn't Greek Orthodox church. It was like a non-denominational, international type church. So I've been doing that since I was 10 years old. But then during university was when I, like Christian Union and stuff, was when I kind of made
Where
the
did you
decision more
study
for myself.
at
Nottingham Trent.
Where, sir?
Nottingham Trent.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That's in Nottingham.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what would you say, kind of, was there a defining point where you went from believing God existed to really wanting to follow him, you know?
I guess during university, I always, I feel like from going from when I was a kid and before that, I never didn't think God was real. My first year in university, I wasn't going to any churches that did Christian Union at all. And then when I was about to hit my second year, I was just like, I feel like I just miss it. Growing up, church, I think for our family was a bit more of a social thing. I think for my mom maybe, we'd like went because we'd see people and do like potlucks every month and stuff. But I didn't have, and we did Alpha Course one time together, which was nice. But I didn't have any kind of individual faith. But then, yeah, during university, I just felt like I missed that community. So joined Christian Union, and then started trying a few different churches with Christian Union in the area. And ended up going to a couple churches, this one church in particular, which was like a Hillsong Network church. And it was my first time experiencing a church of that type that was just a lot like louder and younger and bright lights and everything. And I think it just, like it also introduced me to like the idea of having like a one-on-one relationship with God. And just from there, I kind of went quite quickly. I was just really like, just jumped right in.
Yeah. Is there anything that any particular moment in your life as a testimony that would be helpful to share? Any sort of moments where God has really been real to you in a powerful way? Other than meeting Dan, of course.
I'd say one of the first moments that I've had that I felt like were without a doubt like a God thing that like no one could dispute and take away from me. I mean, people could still say it's a coincidence, but when I kind of first moved to London, I was going to Hillsong in Bermondsey, and we're at church one Sunday, and there was a visiting pastor, and he was doing a sermon about like forgiveness, and he was kind of talking about this one story about this woman and like her stepfather and just some stuff that she needed to forgive him for. And I had a really like bad relationship with my father over the years, kind of just like estranged. Parents got divorced when I was like 2 years old. And there wasn't anything like one big specific thing. It was just in general. And I hadn't spoken to him in probably since I was like 17 or something. So maybe like 7 years or so I hadn't really spoken to him. And the whole service obviously kind of like was connecting with me in general about like forgiveness and like this, and the story that the pastor was talking about, it was about abuse, and my story is not about abuse, but it was more just in terms of, you know, even though the guy didn't necessarily deserve forgiveness and stuff in that way, like, you know, just how important it is, and just like praying to God about forgiveness and things like that. And then, and I was thinking, oh, maybe, you know, I should start thinking about doing that. It would be good. But then the pastor started, you know, praying at the end over everything he was speaking about, and he was encouraging people to just think about somebody that they need to forgive in their lives and stuff. And he was just praying, and he was like, you know, if anyone just think of someone that you really need to forgive, and just be like, I forgive you, Stephen. And he was just saying like random names that like anything, just to make it seem. But my father's name is Stephen. And in that moment, I just really felt like God was specifically saying, I need you to forgive your father. And especially because I actually don't call my dad like dad or father. I call him Steve. Like if I'm talking to Dan or something, I'll be like, oh, Steve, this and stuff. So the fact is, it was just in that moment, I just felt like God was speaking directly to me to say, I need you to forgive him. So I was like praying about it, and I was like, I'm going to forgive him. And I was thinking, oh, like maybe I should like reach out and like just tell him I forgive him. And I was just thinking about how I might go about doing that, because I hadn't spoken to him in like 7 years and stuff. And then, so that was on Sunday. And then on Wednesday, I was going to speak to my mom about like getting his details and stuff so I could speak to him. And Wednesday, it was like midnight or something. My mom calls me from Cyprus, and my father had a heart attack and passed away. Oh. And I obviously hadn't had a chance to speak to him or anything. And it was I didn't realize how upset I would be, because obviously I wasn't close to him. But I felt so devastated about it. And after that, when I was really thinking about it, I really felt like on that Sunday, it's like God had prepared my heart with forgiveness before he had died, so that after he had died, I wasn't carrying it with me for the rest of my life. And it was just such a moment of just thinking about how much like God loves us, but just knows, even if we don't know the things that we're kind of holding on to, he knows the things we're holding on to, and he will like show them to us and like be like, it's okay, I can help you let them go. And he's just doing it because he knows what he's about to bring into our lives, and that we need to let those things go for afterwards and stuff. And honestly, I don't even think, because I met Dan just like a year later, and obviously I started dating, and obviously now we're married and stuff. I almost feel like even healing that relationship with obviously the most important male figure in my life, I don't even think Dan and our relationship would have been the same if I hadn't have had that forgiveness. So
that's really powerful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Round of applause, shall we? Wonderful. Dan, do you want to? Round of applause for Dan, shall we? Follow that one. So, Dan of Dan and Kristen. Someone did say, are you going to interview them together? I said, no, they're individuals. They have their own individual stories. But so, Dan, who are you? Where are you from?
So I'm Daniel. I'm from London. I was born and bred here. Lambeth as well, Vauxhall. Born in St. Thomas's. So was it Terry before?
Yeah.
Terry. So he was describing a few places that I was quite familiar with and recognised. I used to have to go around Lambeth Palace to go to school a lot as well. So a few fellow Londoner in the house. Yeah. So
I guess we know a bit about, it's probably a similar story that you came to EGCC from Kristen.
Yeah.
So we'll skip that question, because I'm sure you came together. So how did sort of Christ or Christianity come into your life?
I think, so I was like, my grandma was a Christian, my mum was a Christian, so I was born and raised knowing God. My grandma kind of was part of more of an African church, so there was an element of there was an element that was a bit removed from me in a sense, because they often spoke in Nigerian, and actually they didn't teach. So I got a twin brother called David, and my mum and my grandma never taught us Nigerian because they were worried about the time for if we would, not that it happened, but if we would develop accents and if we would be unfairly kind of treated within society. So what happened is they never taught us Nigerian, but often my grandma's being part of a Nigerian church would speak in Nigerian. So we didn't understand a lot of stuff. So I understood faith, I understood Jesus, to a degree. I understood God and there's the Holy Spirit, but I didn't really understand fully how that related to me as such. And I couldn't quite connect with the church. So I think when I was around 12 or so, you kind of start getting, as a young boy, you start getting your kind of independence. My mum took us to another church, and that was when we got introduced to kind of more of I think it was maybe a C of E. I can't remember C of E if it was a Catholic, but it was more quite strict in terms, or not, I shouldn't say strict, just quite formal, traditional robes and stuff like that. And I didn't get a sense of church from
like
that.
Terry's
either.
first church.
Probably. I might have seen Terry there as a kid, I don't know. So I might have been there on that service. But yeah, so I went there, so I always had a connection and relation with God. I always spoke to him, but I didn't really understand him. And I think when I was 15 years old, I decided I don't kind of need church, but I thought, actually, but I still want a connection. So I kept reading the Bible. I was like, and actually that was when I started really kind of diving for myself. And I just thought, I'll just have church myself with the Bible. And I prayed this kind of religious same prayer, 30-second prayer, each day, each night. And it was the same words. But what was powerful about that, I think, is because I started getting fed up of praying that same 30-second prayer. It was like, I was like, oh, Lord, bless me and my family. Thank you very much, every night, religiously. And I was just clocking off. And I got tired praying that. And I was like, oh, Lord, I don't want to do this every day, this prayer. I just want to do it once a week, instead. So I wanted to do the same prayer, but once a week, not every day. And then, so I started to go to once a week with that prayer. And then I had a terrible week. And I was like, actually, you know what, Lord knows, I'm just going to go back to every day. And even though that was a very religious prayer, I find that quite powerful for me, because it was like, even though it was all the same words, I felt the Lord still wanted me to speak to him, every day, even if it was the same thing. And I think when I got older, when I started following him properly, I realized how, oh wow, even that small thing that he still wanted from me, But it was when I was 15, I started reading the Bible a bit more, still praying the same prayers, but it got to I didn't fully know who God was. I did know Jesus, but I didn't know everything. And I think it was a gradual process of growing and discovering it for myself. And then finally, when I was 18, Passion of the Christ came out, and that's what actually shifted everything for me. I think I went and watched it, kind of knowing in my spirit that after I watched this, probably things will change with me. Yeah. So I went and watched it, and then I was like, actually, Lord, I want to dedicate my life properly. And then I got baptized. I found a church when I was 18, got baptized, and then kind of just ever since then kind of been following. So
yeah, it's great. Is there a standout moment that attests to me of something where God's... When I say stand out, it doesn't have to be dramatic or something that means a lot to you that kind of shaped where you are today.
I think... Sorry, my phone's buzzing. I think for me, there's quite a few. So God's like, I've always tried to try and test God in a way of, I believe there's so much he can do and he's capable of in our lives and he wants to do in our lives. And I've always felt that I always felt him challenging me. You could either choose to kind of explore me and who I am, or kind of go your own way, and believe me, but go in your own way. And I've always felt him wanting to kind of push me to try and see what he could do with me. And I think a lot of things, a big way that God works with me, has been working with me, is like through in my career, just in my work and stuff. I've had a very unconventional journey in terms of, so I work in film, and I work for an independent film production company at the moment. But when I was trying to get into film and TV, God's always kind of led me into different jobs, and it will be different promptings. So sometimes he'll give me a dream. That person is going to come to you and say something about a job, and then lo and behold, it will happen. And then so I know that's his direction. Or he will say something in my heart, email that person now, and that person has like I'm after a position and that person has that position. So he's done that like through the last 10 years, and he speaks to me quite a lot through guiding me through my career. And I think it started ever since it started at university. When I was 22 or 21, I had to decide whether I do a placement year or if I go back and finish my final year. And I felt God say, Dan, this is the moment. If you choose, well, I got an initial placement year for 12 months, and you have to fill 12 months out. And then it got cancelled to 3 months, and I was like, oh, what do I do? In the summer, it got cancelled. Do I go back to uni, or do I do the 3 months? But then I'm like, Lord, where am I going to go after that? And I felt the Lord in that moment say to me, you can choose now to trust me for, you know, what comes after the 3 months, or if you choose to go back to uni, I felt that I would always choose my way. I would always be choosing my way. So I said, look, if there's any time to risk it without failing, is now. It's just uni. It's 3 months, you know. And so I took that leap. And when I took that leap, that 3 months came and God opened another door. And then I would just ask God, like, oh, I want to work in film. You know, can you give me an opportunity to film? And it was like, after the next 3 months came an opportunity film came up to work in, went to work on a film. And it's like, oh, Lord, I'm fed up of this area of film. Can I go work in visual effects area of film? It's like, after that one, a visual effects area opened up in film. And so, lo and behold, he completed that placement year for me. And that helped me to realize what he could do. And that helped me to realize who he was. But in saying that, that's not I just wanted to share that because that's a big part of my story. But I think one of the biggest testimonies is actually meeting Chris, see how God worked in that. Because I'm in an RN when you were asking the question, oh, what do I share, work or Chris? But one of the reasons why Chris is a testimony for me and one of the most powerful signs of his power and provision for me is because, one, it's away from what he's been doing to me through work. But I was always kind of like, Lord, when I meet someone, I want it to be of you. I want you to be involved in it and part of that process, you know, and also just help me to find someone who's right for me as well in every way. And how I met Chris was, I started going to Hillsong recently, and I wasn't necessarily looking for someone yet, but I felt in my spirit that you're going to meet someone in 6 months, 6 to 7 months. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah. I'm trying to connect with the guys first, because that's usually, I want to connect with, like, if I could find fellowship with a group of guys, that was what will keep me staying. But somewhere ticking in my spirit was like 6 months or so. And then I met a couple of guys who were at Hillsong initially, and then, you know, that helped me to stay because we did a few things. And then in April, around 6 months or so, 6 to 7 months or so, I met, well, no. So 3 months into the journey, I joined the Connect group. I joined my friend's Connect group and went there like every 2 weeks. And then Chris was part of this Connect group, but she never went, basically. So, yeah, I'm gonna say. So Chris wasn't there. So, and then there was one towards the end of the Connect group when it was finishing, like for the term, because they break up, and this was in the summer coming. So I've been going to the Connect group for around 3 months now. This was in the summer. Chris actually came to what the Connect group, and I met her there. But 2 weeks prior to the Connect group, like, she sat in a particular place next to me in the Connect group, not intentionally. No, she sat there first, and I moved to her. Like, she was sitting here or something like that, or there, and I was sitting here, something like that. But 2 weeks prior, there was this seat that I was sitting at now. I saw that seat, and I was like, oh, I want to go. Sorry, hopefully this is making sense and not confusing. But 2 weeks prior, I was at the same Connect group. Chris wasn't there, and I was like, oh, I should go sit in that seat. And I was being kind, and I let someone else go sit there. I was like, next time, I'm going to sit in that seat no matter what, yeah? Because it was a nice, comfortable seat, cushion and everything, you know? So 2 weeks now comes. Chris comes to the Connect group for the first time. We're about to finish also the Connect group for the season. And then I say hello to Chris. Oh, she's new, and she's talking about her experience. Well, we just meet and greet, and then I kind of just leave it. She goes and sits next to the seat. So she sits right next to the seat that I wanted to sit in. And I was like, oh, do I go there? If I go there, it's going to look like I'm going to try and chat to her. I don't want to put any impressions. And I was like, I don't care. I said 2 weeks ago I was going to sit in this seat. I'm just going to go to this seat. And I went straight to the seat, so I was next to her pretty much. Or I can't remember the exact ratio, but we were close enough. And then she started we started the Connect group. She gave her testimony about her life and some of the struggles she went through. And then I just remember my heart beating in it. I was like, whoa, this lady's really, really, really amazing and impressive. And I was just like, Lord Jesus, just under my tongue, just please, after this Connect group, just give me 5 minutes alone with her, Just give me 5 minutes alone, please. And I've never really prayed that, but I just thought, I just really want to speak to this lady. And then we spoke. So because she was next to me, it was easy as well because I was there. Because if I had been somewhere else, I probably would have just gone off or not tried to make the effort too much, a bit nervous. So we spoke, and the whole room cleared, kind of everyone went their way, and we were just chatting back and forth. And then I went home, and my spirit just felt a sense of it felt very, that's not like, I'm not going to say that's the one, but the Holy Spirit was telling me, I felt an absolute peace from speaking with her, that I hadn't felt before. I was like, oh, there's something here that the Holy Spirit is kicking me about. And so I was like, okay, I'll speak to her the next week in Connect, the last Connect the following week. But she didn't turn up. So, and the only reason why she had turned up at the Connect that I was there was, I think, because she just decided that she wanted to come. Sorry if I'm saying this wrong, but you decided that you just wanted to go out and just go somewhere, something like that.
It's basically just, I had surgery, and that's why I hadn't been
Yeah.
for ages. And I've been in the house every day for like months.
Yeah.
And that week was at someone else's house.
Your one. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
And so I thought, oh, this one is easier to run. I need to just get out.
Yeah. And that was the week. So it was literally so lo and behold, she doesn't come to the Connect group 2 weeks later. So that was the only time I ever saw her. And then the Connect group finishes for the term. And so obviously later I kind of pursued because I found her number and all of that stuff from the Connect group, and I started pursuing, and that story's kind of just like here we are today. But for me, it was the small window that was there that could be seen as coincidence, but actually it was a window that the Lord had kind of provided and made, an unusual window for her to go to at that moment, for me to be in that Connect, for the Lord to speak to me and say, around 6 months you're going to meet somebody, And when I met, and then meeting her and as getting to know her, realizing how many similarities we have, she's just the other version of me. Like, we both have single mums, both raised in single parent homes. She has a sibling, I have one sibling. So we were like the exact copy but opposite of each other. And it was just like, oh wow. So the reason why I share that is because I still use that testimony now with stuff. Like, anytime I think, oh, I don't know if this can happen, or I don't know if that could happen, I always remember how God set up Chris, and actually how she's very unique, and there's a lot of things I asked for that only God knew about, that no one will know about, but that she fulfills in so many ways. And so I always use that as a testimony. I was like, okay, if God opened that, or if I need that open, and God can do that, So yeah, so that's my main one. Sorry to go on long. Am I the last person? You got someone else?
Well,
sorry, I don't mean to take up time.
no, you're doing great. It's fantastic.
Sorry.
That's lovely. Thank you. It's all about getting to know you, isn't it? So it's nice, especially you as a new couple in the church. It's nice just to hear your story. But Tracy, you want to come down? I think we should get Tracy to come in her. And then You actually made notes as well.
Well, yeah, just literally as I was sitting there. So I might not have the answers to your questions.
Well, the first question is, who are you and where are you from? So,
Right, okay. So this is all right, yeah?
yeah.
So my name's Tracy. I was born in a brand new ward in Queen Mary's at Sidcup. The first little girl born in there. And when my mum left the hospital, she picked up a little boy and took him. So left me in the hospital. And that was the start of my life, really. So, my mum and dad bought a house in Sidcup. My dad couldn't really take the pressure, really. He had a drink problem, and we lost the house. My dad was quite violent. We had then we had rooms in Footscray Road in New Eltham. And one of my first memories is I was about 2 years old. So this was like, centuries ago. And it was, I don't know if a lot of people here might remember Top of the Pops. Mm-hmm. And I loved dancing with Pan's people. So I really wanted a night dress on that night. And my mum put pyjamas on me, and I was like, I don't want pyjamas on because I can't swing to the music. So I was sort of probably throwing a tantrum. And then my dad came home from work, and I think he'd been in the beehive, and I could smell, apart from the alcohol, I could smell the damp. So it must have been like winter time. And then he started sort of beating my mum up, and he was whacking her with an umbrella, and I think the gravy had dried up on his dinner. And I remember sort of going to the window. I mean, I must have been frightened, but I remember looking up to the sky and just knowing God was there. I don't know how I knew. But my dad's mum was a Christian. She used to go to a place in New Eltham called Nova Hall Fellowship. Mm. So as I was sort of like growing up, I used to sort of be with her quite a bit. But I always thought she was a bit miserable, really. But obviously she must have said so many prayers, because she used to talk about Mr. North and Mr. and Mrs. Philpott or whatever when I was really young. I don't know why I'm saying this, but those names have come up recently, and this is like 55 years later. So, and they were, well, Mr. North was quite a big name, I think, in these fellowships. So, so obviously my nan had obviously prayed for me, so I just knew God was there somehow. Anyway, my life went on. We left the house in New Eltham. They hadn't paid the rent, so we did a moonlight flit. Ended up in Charlton when I was about 5. My dad was still really sort of violent. When I was about 6, my little sister was born. At that time as well, I started to be really fearful and knew that there was something other than us. I used to get a lot of strange, voices and stuff, which was really scary. And apart from the fact that my dad was like a lunatic, and especially at night when he'd come home from work, because he'd have gone to the pub. And I remember one thing, I told Jana this the other day, I was so scared in the night to go to the loo that I used to get out and do a wee on my carpet. I just thought, Mum, did you not realise my room must have been terrible? But when you're little, you're like, I can't go to the toilet because I'm going to get a whack, so I'll have to do a wee here. And I was, it's just funny funny you think about things now. But anyway, so my life went on. My mum and dad got divorced. I was about 14 or 15. I'd sort of heard about people getting readings and stuff like that, and Ouija board and whatever, and I think me and my friends had mucked about with a Ouija board. So I was very aware then of the other side of the spirit realm, but I thought it was God. I thought that was Christ, and I was connecting with him. So if you'd have said to me, oh yeah, you're a Christian, like, yeah, I'm a Christian. But obviously I wasn't. So my life went on. My mum and dad got divorced. Then my mum met someone and she left us. So I was about 18 then, and my sister was 12. So by that time I was running my own business and I was looking after my sister. And it was hard, but you just, you just get through it somehow. Anyway, going right forward to when I actually met Jesus, I think I was about, I don't know if I was about 36 or something. And 6 months beforehand, I knew that something was missing in my life. And I kept saying to my friends, and there's something missing. I don't know what it is, but there's something missing. And at that time, we've got a house in Eltham. We had a Mercedes-Benz. Simon was earning plenty of money, but there was something missing. And I was really low, and I just didn't know what was missing. And one day, a lady that used to come to this church and far, her daughter used to be friends with my daughter Daisy, Hania and Daisy, and it was Easter weekend, and it was on a Saturday night, and I think Daisy and Hania had been to a ballet show or something, and Anne was chatting to me, and she said, "Oh, what are you doing tomorrow?" So I said, "Oh, well, we're going to Simon's mum and dad's, it's Easter Sunday." I said, "But you know what?" I've always wanted to say thank you to Jesus for what you've done for me, not really knowing what he'd done for me. Going back to 6 months before that happened, I was working, and I just said it out loud. I'm like, "All right, God, universe, whatever you are, whoever you are, I'm ready for my next step." Well, don't ever say that to God, because he ain't good. The next day, I left my job. I think I had a bit of a breakdown. I started painting watercolours of angels. It was the only thing I could paint, really, and about God, which was really strange, because obviously God was probably talking to me, and I just didn't know. I was so low. And so going forward to the 6 months, Anne said to me, "Why don't you come to my church? I go to church." So I said, "Oh, all right then." So Easter Sunday gets up, comes here. And at that time we used to have 3 rows of chairs, I think. And I come in and sat at the back, obviously, because I thought I ain't going down the front, don't know no one. And Anne introduced me to Betty. I already knew Michelle Watson. So they'd obviously been praying for me. And Betty said, "Oh, have you ever been here before?" So I'm like, "No." So she said, "Oh, batten down the hatches." Well, seriously, she was so right, because it really was batten down the hatches. So I'm in the meeting, and whatever was going on the stage, I think Phil Watson was praying, and I don't know if he said, now thinking back, all I heard him say was something about you need to come to the front to get prayer or something, but I don't know what he said, but no one was down the front. I think there might have been a couple of people on the stage. I don't know if someone was leaving and they were praying for him or whatever. So I'm in my chair up there, and I can hear this voice going, "Go down the front." I'm like, "I ain't going down the front." It's, "Go down the front." And I'm sort of could feel this presence, and I'm arguing with this presence. "Go down the front." So I'm like, "All right." And I just said it out loud. I went, "All right." And I come down the front. I'm like, what am I going to do when I get to the front? And I knelt down on the floor. I just didn't know what to do. So I just put my head down, and Betty come to the side of me, and she knelt down. She went, "Would you like me to pray?" I went, "Yeah, if you like." She went, "What do you want me to pray for?" I went, "I don't know." So Betty started praying in tongues, and I thought, "Oh, she's praying in French. It's interesting." I don't know what she's saying, but anyway, didn't feel anything, whatever. Got up, went back to my chair, and probably at that time, Anne and Michelle were probably like doing cartwheels in their spirit, thinking, what has gone on with Tracy? Left the church that day, went home, picked up the kids, Simon, went to Simon's mum and dad's, and their friend was coming for Easter lunch. And when they come over, they're like, oh, Trace, take my watch, do a reading for me, because I could always pick up on stuff. And I knew immediately not to do it. And I don't know how I knew, I just knew not to do it. And I'm like, oh. So I sort of held it for a second, said a couple of things, and give it back. I thought, that ain't right. I don't want to do that. Anyway, the day went on, got up the next day, Easter Monday, and I was like a lunatic. I was singing around the house, sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna. Simon thought that I'd lost the plot. My best friend at the time came over to visit, and we were really, really good friends, like really, really close. And she bought this red leather handbag, and I love handbags and shoes. And I'm looking at this handbag thinking, why don't I like that handbag? I'd love that handbag, but I don't like this handbag. I know that sounds really stupid, but that's how God sort of talks to me. Anyway, so, yeah, Simon, that week I had some crazy, mad stuff going on. I had the feeling that I wanted to fast. I didn't know about fasting, never, but I just thought, I'm going to fast. I thought, yeah, I'm going to fast. So that day, I don't know if it was probably just drinking tea, and the kids wanted fish and chips for dinner. So I got that, sat them in the back room, and I sat in the front room, and I'm like, oh my God, those fish and chips are like, oh. I'm like salivating. So Sonny come in and went, Mum, do you want this? Because I don't want these, which is not like Sonny because he loves his grub. So I was like, I just could have just one chip. So I went to pick this chip up, and this audible voice that only I could hear said, put it down. And I was like, oh, all right. It's just so funny. But I think God has to get my attention like that because my brain is sort of like goes all over the place. And then on the Saturday morning, I got up early, and I'm like, all right, God, if you really, really are there. But by which time I thought, yeah, I know you are there, because Simon had thought I'd turned the children into the Flanders children off The Simpsons. He was like, what have you done to my children? They're like, they've got crosses, they've got balls saying Jesus loves you, and I've got Jesus music playing, and God hit me like a firework. And I got up this really early Saturday morning, and I'm like, okay, God, if you're there, like, I want to walk with you today. What would you like me to do? Because I'm just so fantastic. I fasted. I'm so holy. I didn't eat that chip. So God said, forgive your mum. So I went, well, I can't forgive my mum because she's at the market. It's really early. She'll be setting out. She never has a phone on. My mum would never sort of have a phone on, a bit like me. We're not into gadgets and stuff. And I really meant, do you want me to pray for world peace or something like that? Not really forgive my mum for leaving me to bring up my sister and blah, blah, blah. And God never said anything else. So I'm like, come on, I don't want to do the forgive me mum bit. What else do you want me to do? Nothing. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, and my phone rang, and it was my mum. Now, my mum's setting up her business. She doesn't ring me at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's not going to happen. So I answered the phone. I'm like, Mum, you all right? She's like, yeah. I went, you at the market? She went, yeah. She said, you've been ringing me? So I'm like, no. I went, no. She went, oh. So I went, all right. I went, Mum, I forgive you for leaving us all those years ago. And it gave me my relationship back with my mum. She was heartbroken, I was. Anyway, we got our act together. My mum became a Christian of some sorts. And about 4 years after that, my mum, she wasn't well. And we knew that she was going to die. She had like a couple of months anyway. God gave her about 6 months, which was amazing. I mean, the people here at church were really brilliant. They've prayed me through so much. Like Margaret and Jim have been like a spiritual mum and dad to me, amazing. Dee and Jana and all the ladies, Teresa, everyone, there's me. Margaret, everyone, so many people prayed for me. And but a day before my mum was going to pass, it was just me and her sitting in the room together, and she was brilliant, my mum. She was just very easy to deal with. She said, I think it's my time, Trace. So I went, all right, Mum. I think, oh, man. So I said, all right, Mum, do you want to pray? And she went, yeah. And she was very ditzy and like a little blonde, ditzy, nutty person. And she went, dear Jesus, I think I'm ready to see you now. Can you come and get me? And I think within 24 hours she was gone. It was just amazing. As she was taking her last breaths, and it was very quiet and serene and amazing. And God just took her, and there was no like the death rattles and all that, none of that. And I was like, go on, Mum, go for it, Mum. My sister was sobbing. My mum's partner, Bill, was sobbing, and I'm like excited. I'm thinking, my mum's dying and I'm excited. This is not right. But I just knew where she was going. I knew she was going to be all right. And then she passed, and literally about an hour later, God gave me a vision of her. And I was just sitting there. My sister was putting all these quilts on my mum, going, Mum, you're cold. I'm thinking, yeah, she's dead. And I'm just sort of sitting there, and God just showed me my mum, and she was really quite young looking. She was probably in her early 30s. And she had her blonde bobbed hair and her big gold earrings. And she was twirling around going, Trace, I've made it. I've made it. And I just knew that she was with God. And I was like, oh, just knew. And I would never want my mum back here in a second. Never forgot she died. You know, when people go, oh, I forgot my mum died and I was going to ring them. I'm like, oh, no, I don't want my mum back here. She's up in the glory, whooping it up. And thank God for Jesus, because that wouldn't have been. So there have been many amazing things that have happened in my life where God's got my attention. You know, the list goes on and on and on, and I don't think we've got time.
Two.
Yes, yeah. Yes.
So you've done the introduction.
Yes,
now.
so that was the introduction. So,
That's
yeah.
lovely.
Anyway, God is good.
Oh man, thank you, Trace. Brilliant. So I realise it's 12:15, but just to finish, it's been lovely. I think I hope that you've recognised God works in very different ways with different people. He's very personal, isn't he? And I think it's just lovely just to sort of hear from people what their story is. But so just to finish, let's just take communion. I'm going to or maybe Dan, you want to put some background music on? And I just feel free to go and take some bread and wine. But what I'd encourage you to do, you don't have to do it. Just find someone and maybe just pray for one another, or just pray together. And as we take communion, communion is about remembering the body and the blood of Christ, isn't it? But it's also about the church, us doing this. The loaf is us eating the same loaf together, isn't it? So I just thought it'd be a nice fitting end, really. So I'm just going to pray, and then just grab some juice and some bread, and then once everyone's eaten, we're finished. We'll have some tea and coffee. So Father, I just